Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. If anyone's new here, my name's OwenAlec. On this channel, I do everything drum related. That includes drum covers, tutorials, gear reviews, tips and advice, plus Q&As just like this video. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, please do consider subscribing, hit the like button, all that good stuff, because it really helps the channel. Thank you very much. So a few weeks ago, I sent out a mass social media post asking for your questions, whether they be drumming related or not, just send them in, and you guys didn't disappoint. Now, whilst there were quite a lot of questions that were submitted, there's some of these ones that are going to be a little bit in depth, so I've only managed to whittle it down to about 8. So without further ado, let's jump in with the first question. How much practice is enough? Well, essentially this entirely depends on you. It entirely depends on how much practice you want to put in. Some people will practice for 45 minutes a day. Some people will practice for hours upon hours every single day. Other people do 10 minutes every week. It really does depend entirely on your goals, where you want to be and where you see yourself in the next 12 months, in the next 5 years. If you want to be a world touring drummer, then you're gonna need to start practicing quite a bit more. If you're looking to just play pubs and clubs, then yeah, keeping on top of certain rudiments or certain songs and things like that, it's just keeping yourself refreshed so that when you do go out, you're able to play the stuff really, really good, but you're not looking to kind of make it a full-time job. That being said, for me, I like to try and practice whenever I can. I am a very busy person. A lot of the time I have a business to run and things. And even though I own a rehearsal studio, I don't actually get much chance to practice as much as you'd think. So like I say, for me, I just try and get the practice in whenever I can. You do have to be a little bit careful sometimes, I think though, because I myself have over-practiced before, where I've been trying to get a particular part down and I just keep going at it, and I end up burning myself out. I tend to find around about the 2-hour mark, if I've been doing something really intensive, that's when I'm gonna start lagging. I feel like I'm holding back my own progress at that point then, because my body's tired and it just won't do what I want it to, even though my brain's kind of getting really annoyed with it. It just won't do what I want it to. So I have to either take a break and then come back to it half an hour later, or I can try and come back to it another day. Overall, the key is consistency. If you're able to practice 15 to 20 minutes every single day, you're going to progress so much quicker than say doing an hour or 2 hours once a week. Which drums and cymbals are you using and how are they tuned? So this question came from one of my drum covers. I believe it was a Nickelback cover, and essentially I'm using the same cymbals that I have been doing for the past 8 years, which is Amedia cymbals. They are genuinely fantastic, and I even got rid of my Sabians. I love Sabian, by the way, but Amedia were definitely just going to take the top spot for me. Amedia cymbals are handmade in Istanbul, and in my humble opinion, with the quality that they produce, the sound that they produce, they are second to none. So if you're looking for new cymbals and you want to change things up a little bit and just experiment with something different, a brand new company, I would highly recommend going checking out Amedia cymbals. Of course, as always, I will leave a link in the description below. But in terms of drums, I'm actually using 3 different kits right now. I've got my British Drum Company Legend series, my DW Jazz series, and my Mapex Saturn Evolution. All 3 of these kits offer something different, and I just absolutely love the sound of them. But typically the way I tune my drums is the higher toms I'll try to have a little bit higher, and then I want the lower stuff lower, so I've got a nice contrast and nice even intervals as I go around the kit. However, that being said, when it comes to the Mapex kit, because it's a 1 up, 1 down, I want something that's really nice and thuddy and chunky. So it's a 12-inch and a 16-inch floor tom, and I just have those tuned a little bit lower and a little bit more, like I say, chunky, so it suits more of the rock style stuff that I do with new rocks. How long have you been with Amedia? So I kind of inadvertently answered this question before, but essentially I've been with Amedia for around about 8 years now, and it's the best decision I ever made. Previous to that, I was using Sabian cymbals. I wasn't endorsed with them, but I was using Sabian, I think AAXs across the board pretty much, and they were fantastic sounding cymbals. I really enjoyed them, but they sounded very generic. And I wanted something a little bit more focused and a little bit more tailored to the sound that I had in my head. And I was actually introduced to Amedia cymbals by a good friend of mine called Pesky. Shout out to Pesky. And basically he came down to my studio one day advertising the Manchester Drum Show, and we got chatting about drums and things like that, and I kind of mentioned that I wasn't quite as happy with my Sabians, and he just said, look, try out Amedia. You know, we got in touch with the guy who was running it in this country at the time, which was Alex, super nice guy. And he just brought his entire stock down to my studio. We set my drum kit up, we tried loads of different combinations, and it was such a fun day just trying out all these different cymbals. But it was clear to me straight away that these were cymbals that were on another level and exactly what I was looking for. So after we found the right combination for me, I put an order in there and then. And of course, as you guys will have seen on this channel plenty of times before, I even got the Amedia tattoo. What are your top 5 albums of all time? Well, That's a really good question. And in fact, I'm going to answer this slightly differently because normally people just sort of say, here's my top 5 albums of all time. However, what I'm going to do is answer them chronologically through my life. So the best albums that I was listening to, or my favorite albums that I was listening to at particular points in my life. So let's wind the clock back to around about 2004, when I was in my second year, I think, of high school. Me and my friend Danny Lowry were absolutely obsessed with Green Day. And so when they brought out in September of 2004, I think it was, American Idiot, we were all over it. Now, admittedly, there was quite a few songs on that album that I didn't really listen to that much, but there was a few on there that I just had on constant repeat. The most notable ones would probably be things like American Idiot's title track. There was Holiday, there was Wake Me Up When September Ends, there was Boulevard of Broken Dreams, and I think my favourite to this day from that album was Jesus of Suburbia. Next, we'll wind the clock on to 2006, when My Chemical Romance brought out Welcome to the Black Parade. We immediately gravitated towards this album because it had a lot of teenage angst on it, and of being young teenagers at the time, very impressionable. We just really enjoyed the music that was coming out of that. We enjoyed the message behind the lyrics. Not to mention the fact that it was just all over the music channels, so you really couldn't escape it. There was quite a lot of people in my social group, in my circle, that were listening to that album, so I think it's a favourite for a lot of different people. But then towards the end of my school years, I started listening to a lot of Avenged Sevenfold, and in 2007 they released their White album, or the self-titled album. There was quite a few songs on that album as well that at first I really enjoyed, but I never really gave that much of the time of the day. It was more the years afterwards, like just as it got towards 2009, that I was actually really getting into those songs and really bashing that entire album. Again, you've got some of the best singles off that album. You've got Afterlife, Almost Easy, and then you've got the just epic song that is Little Piece of Heaven, which incidentally was actually a song that nearly didn't get made. It was M Shadows pushing the Rev into actually finishing it and pushing it through production stages. And then years later, it gets voted by the fans to be their best song. And then after that, going into my late teen years, early 20s, I was absolutely rinsing Dream Theater. Now, normally in these kind of lists, Dream Theater would be my number one. It's pretty predictable. Everybody knows I love Dream Theater. I've even got another tattoo of them there. But we're going chronologically of when I started getting into different bands. So Dream Theater takes the number 2 spot. Now the album that I'm going to choose here is actually kind of a toss-up between 2 different ones. One of them is a full-on metal album that I absolutely love because it really appeals to the metalhead in me. But then there's another one that's far more proggy, and it actually has a storyline running through the entire thing. If you're a Dream Theater fan, you probably know which albums I'm talking about. The first one, the metal one, is Train of Thought, and then the more proggy one, the storyline one, the concept album, is Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from Memory. Now, I love both these albums for different reasons, but for the sake of this list, I'm probably gonna have to give it to Metropolis Part 2. I just love how the story in this album unfolds from start to finish. There's no skippable songs. It's just an absolute amazing, seriously amazing album. And they've got some really nice reprises in there, different riffs from earlier on that come in later on. And of course, as well, you've got that really famous instrumental, The Dance of Eternity. I have in fact done a drum cover of The Dance of Eternity on this channel way back when. If you want to see an updated version of that, if you'd like to see me do that again, please let me know in the comment section. And then we move into my mid to late 20s. I'm actually 30 now, 31 next month. That's scary. But in that time, there was a band that really started to stand out to me. And I really liked the albums that they were coming out with at that time. There's actually, like I say, there's 2. So one of them is Vector and the other one is Virus, and these are by Haken. I love the fact that these 2 albums connect in different ways. Not only do they have certain riffs that kind of reprise in the second album, but they've also got lyrical themes that pass over as well. I just think the fact that they've been able to do that and kind of link the 2 together that way is just so clever. And again, the actual music itself, it's just bangers. Not to mention the fact that Ray Hearn's drumming in these albums are just incredible. I've never heard a drummer play like that before. All you guys know that I'm a massive Portnoy fan, and a lot of what I play on drums is inspired by Mike Portnoy, but when it comes to Ray Hearn, I'm looking at what he's doing, and my mind's just completely blown. It's just absolutely amazing. So if you've got some time on your hands and you want to hear some amazing music, I highly recommend going checking out Green Day's American Idiot, My Chemical Romance's The Black Parade, Avenged Sevenfold's White album or the self-titled album, Dream Theater's Train of Thought and Scenes from Memory, and then Haken's Vector and Virus. What is your most viewed video? Well, this is actually a little bit of a funny story because the video that I've got the most views on was actually a video I wasn't going to make, and it was just one that I thought was going to be kind of funny. I was in a bit of a whimsical sort of mood, and I thought, yeah, why not? We'll just throw this out there. I'm probably going to get a bit of hate for it, a little bit of flack for it, but whatever. But as I say, it turned out to be one that's got me well over 65,000 views, which I know for some people on YouTube, that's like, you know, nothing. They probably get triple and double that in no time at all on one video. But for a small YouTuber like me, having 65,000 views on one video that's been there for maybe a few years is absolutely massive. And I'm just incredibly grateful and humbled by the people that keep commenting on it, saying how much they enjoyed it. I am, of course, talking about my metal drum cover of Taylor Swift's Love Story. Now, I'm not really ashamed to say that that's actually kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. I think it's a really good song. I think it's really well put together. I like the storyline behind it. And yeah, I just think it's a good guilty pleasure song. Who inspired you to play when you first picked up the instrument, and who inspires you now? Oddly enough, I never really had a one person or one thing that inspired me to play drums. I remember my brother brought home a drum kit one time and he had it set up, and I was under very strict instructions to not touch it. Basically, don't even look at it. But of course, being young and, you know, I thought, he's at the house, I'm gonna give it a go. Now, before that, I was getting guitar lessons and I never really felt that comfortable with it. I got to like my grade 5 at one point, but again, it just never really felt natural. But then I got behind a drum kit and it just felt great. It felt natural. It felt like I was meant to play this. So I then started playing that in school, in my high school, with a couple of different people. We started up bands, we started playing different gigs, different songs and things like that. So that was a really good jumping off point for what ended up being my career. But then throughout the years, I've had various different people inspire me to play drums. Some of them actually almost inspired me to give up at one point. No, I'm just kidding. So essentially, over the years, I've been listening to various different drummers. I'd say one of my biggest influences when I was in my teen years was the Rev from Avenged Sevenfold, and he's another one I've got tattooed on my arm. It was his style, it was the way he came up with things and the way he added to the music. It was something that I'd not really heard before. You know, normally people just sit back and play 4/4, but then you got someone like the Rev who was adding more to the music and taking it to that next level. And the same could be said for Mike Portnoy. This was the first time I'd ever seen someone put the drums at the forefront of the music, something that was kind of doing a unison with the guitars and the keyboard, and they were really bouncing off each other. It wasn't just a case of, like, again, the drummer sitting at the back and playing 4/4 and watching the guitarist go off on one and just do his own thing. No, they were all locked in together and they were playing the same sort of things, and he was really adding a musicality to the drums that I'd just never seen before. But then in more recent years, there's drummers like Ray Hearn from Haken, Alex Bent from Trivium, Luke Holland, who's played with several different people, including Jason Richardson. But someone who's been really inspiring me recently, and someone who I think is such an underrated drummer. He really, really needs more attention and people just to understand how good he is at coming up with drum licks and drum riffs and things like that, is Adam Yanzi from Vola. He's a truly unique drummer, and the way he approaches the drums with such a minimalistic setup is, again, something I've not really seen before. And I think that he's just got a groove and a feel and timing that just nobody else has. When are New Rocks on again? So for anyone that doesn't know, I play in a 2000s new metal, emo, alternative, pop punk, nostalgic covers band called New Rocks. We play some of the greatest nostalgic bangers from the late 90s and 2000s. People like My Chemical Romance, System of a Down, Linkin Park, Fountains of Wayne, Wheatus. The list goes on. They've got a huge plethora of music that we've put together. And so far, the feedback that we've had from some of these gigs have been absolutely immense. So we would absolutely love to play for a function or a wedding or just a regular venue near you soon. But in fact, our next gig is at a venue called Wangies in Eccles, and that is on Sunday, the 28th of May. Entry is completely free of charge. It has a great vibe in there, and we'll be kicking off the music around about 9:30. But that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for sending in your questions. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everybody's. Maybe we can do a part 2 at some point in the future. Thank you once again, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.